Welcome to Looking For. Today we are going to retrace the evolution of La Défense, the largest European business district, from its beginning to its future projects. Every morning, equivalent numbers to the population of the city of France arrive in La Défense to carry out their working day. With nearly 3.8 million square meters of office space, 61 towers over 100 meters high, and nearly 500 large companies in the locality, La Défense is today the leading business district in the French capital and the largest in Europe in terms of surface area. The business district can take great pride on the international scene because it's currently the fourth most prestigious business center in the world, behind London, New York and Tokyo. It's home to the headquarters of some of the largest multinational companies, renowned schools, and even the largest shopping mall in Europe, with record attraction of 42 million visitors per year. But La Défense has not always been the dynamic and attractive district that we know today. Before it became the modern and flourishing district that we all know today, La Défense was once a simple avenue leading to Paris. An avenue that we now call the Voie Royale, or more commonly, the historical axis of Paris. As early as the Middle Ages, the kings of France used to leave their royal residence in the Louvre to go hunting in the forests of Saint-Germain-en-Laye. To do so, they took a straight path which was called Chemin de la Chaussée and crossed the Seine River by ferry until the unfortunate incident of Friday, June 9, 1606, where the ferry carrying the carriage of King Henry IV and the Queen Marie de Médicis suddenly overturned in the Seine. Following these events, the construction of a wooden bridge was undertaken to connect the two shores safely and quickly. Resultingly, the first bridge of Neuilly was built. A little later, under the reign of Louis XIV, guided by the spirit of the Renaissance period and the search for perspective, the king's prime minister, Colbert, convinced him to design the Tuileries Garden. It was then that André Le Nôtre, the eminent gardener of the Sun King, imposed this French garden style and undertook the opening of the wall, which limited the Tuileries Garden to the west, thus marking the starting point of the royal axis and of the Champs-Élysées, previously Grand Cour. The search for perspective will later lead, in 1768, to the extension of the avenue to the top of the small hill of Chantecoq, the future location of the business districts. After the end of the war of 1870 against Prussia, the General Council of the Seine decided to organize a competition to erect a sculpture to symbolize the glory of the soldiers and civilians who had defended the city during the siege of Paris. Inaugurated on August 12, 1883, in front of a huge crowd of 100,000 people, the statue of Louis-Ernest Barrias, named La Défense de Paris, was unveiled, and later became the district's namesake. It can be found today in front of the Tête Défense Tower. At the same time, the city found itself in the Industrial Revolution, and Paris developed increasingly westerly, until it extended into the territory of La Défense at the beginning of the 20th century. The meadows and farms will gradually give way to factories and other manufacturing. The Avenue de la Défense, on the other hand, was preserved from industry by the presence of numerous pubs, dance halls and artist studios. Faced with an ever-increasing population, public transportation was developed and the first tramway line connecting La Défense to the Place de l'Étoile was built. For reference, you should note that the steam locomotive required a water temperature of 200 degrees Celsius at each station before being able to restart. This is what earned it the popular nickname of the boiler. In the Roaring Twenties, the idea of making La Défense a new district where large business complexes would be developed emerged, and several development projects were presented. Among them, a 1922 development is prevalent, Maison Tour, designed by Auguste Perret. It aligned two rows of skyscrapers 200 meters high. 4 years later, in 1926, Le Corbusier made a proposal which already preconfigured the appearance of the current district with a strict separation of the flows of cars and pedestrians. But none of these projects managed to convince the authorities, and it was not until the late 50s that the ambition to radically transform the district became a reality. In 1958, the Center for New Industries and Techniques, the CNIT, was inaugurated, and the public development establishment of La Défense was created to build, manage, and animate the future districts, which was designed according to the principles of the modern movement. The organization of the space is based on a strict separation of flows. Thus, the pedestrian overpass, oriented along the historical axis, is used for the circulation of pedestrians and emergency vehicles, and public transport are located under the pedestrian overpass in the same way as the cars. In 1963, the Esso company was the first to set up in La Défense, bringing together more than 1,500 of its employees in a 12-story building with optimal comfort for the time. For example, the building features one of the very first self-service restaurants and even a movie theater. These new daily flows of commuters will very quickly lead to the need to create an area line to quickly serve the business district from Paris. On January 19, 1970, the SNCF station was inaugurated in the open air, and will be entirely covered by the pedestrian overpass in 1976. The first trains will run at a speed of more than 100 km per hour under the historical axis, linking the district to the Place de l'Étoile in only 4 minutes. However, the metro was not realized until April 1, 1992, with the extension of Line 1 from the Neuilly Bridge to La Défense. The project had been slow to take shape, and entrepreneurs specializing in transporting skiers had even gone so far as to propose the building of a ski lift to connect the top of La Défense to the Neuilly Bridge. What a funny idea! With regards to the skyscrapers of La Défense, the first generation was built in the 1960s, and the towers follow an initial model of 42 meters by 24 meters at their base, with a maximum height of 100 meters. The first to emerge from the ground was the Nouvel Tower, inaugurated in 1966, soon followed by the Aurore Towers, Europe and Crédit Lyonnais. But as early as the 1960s, much more ambitious projects were proposed, like the Polak Tower in 1962, a gigantic 750-meter-high broadcasting tower, which was to house a high-altitude restaurant at a height of 600 meters. It should have been located in the current place of the Grande Arche, but was never built because of its high costs and its questionable interests. In 1969, the ceiling of the heights was raised by the EPAD and allows the construction of 200-meter towers to create twice as much office space on the same surface. So it was in the 70s that the second generation of towers was born, as well as the first residential towers, like the Tour Défense 2000, the tallest residential tower in France. Among the office towers that marked this generation, the Grande Tower stands out. Inaugurated in 1974 and marking the entrance to the business district from the top of its 180 meters, it didn't avoid anger from press and Parisians who considered it much too visible from the capital. Additionally, the monolithic Tower Fiat was inaugurated the same year and is known today as the Areva Tower. But the oil crisis of 1973 will be the reason of the real estate market crash and left hundreds of thousands of square meters of office space empty for several years. It was in the 1980s that construction began again, giving life to the third generation of towers, more luminous, comfortable, and economical, such as the Alto Tower, built in 1985, now under the Total Group label. The 1980s also marked the beginning of the Tête Défense competition, with the aim of creating a strong monument to close the historical axis of Paris, which in 1989 led to the inauguration of the Arche de la Défense, designed by the Danish architect Johan Otto Frans Prycassen, who unfortunately died 2 years before the inauguration of his masterpiece. For reference, know that the void of the modern monuments could house within it a building as large as the Notre Dame Cathedral. Finally, the construction of the Grande Arche also marks the entrance of the fourth generation towers, much brighter, with fully glazed surfaces and more spacious offices, but also more energy efficient. The two towers, Chassagne and Alicante, built by Société Générale in 1995, or the Tête Défense Tower, are part of this generation. But this period also had its ambitious projects. Jean Nouvel's endless tower, built entirely of concrete and which should have reached 425 meters, to be one of the tallest skyscrapers in the world at the time. However, the project was once again left behind for financial reasons. At the beginning of the year 2000, space was running out at La Défense, and developers are taking over narrow locations, often on the edge of the circular boulevard, as illustrated by the CBX and Exaltis towers. To keep the aesthetic of the neighborhood, Nicolas Sarkozy, the president of EPAD in 2006, promoted a renewal plan for the business districts with two 300-meter-high skyscrapers as its emblem, the Phare Tower and the Signal Tower by Jean Nouvel. The first one will be constantly pushed back by class action suits, and the second quickly left behind by sustained opposition of the mayor of Puteaux. Once again, Jean Nouvel failed due to financial constraints. Indeed, the financial crisis of 2008 will go on to cause the bankruptcy of the two investors in the Signal Tower, forcing Jean Nouvel once again to bury his projects. 3 years later, the renovation of the Hekla Tower is completed and becomes the Tour First, passing from 159 meters to 231 meters. It thus becomes the tallest tower in France, dethroning the Montparnasse Tower by a few meters. The restructuring and modernization of the La Défense district continues, and construction projects continue to increase. For example, the following projects have been launched with great achievements since 2014, such as the Majunga Tower, Alto, Saint-Gobain, Carpe Diem, and especially my favorite, which strongly brings to mind the Gherkin of London, the D2 Tower. There are also very beautiful projects in progress, which are more than 200 meters high, like the Hekla Tower by Jean Nouvel, completed recently. Construction has also recently started on the Link Tower, the future headquarters of the Total Group. Scheduled for completion in 2025, it will be the tallest tower in the country, culminating at 242 meters. Additionally, the Sisters Towers and the Jardins de l'Arche Tower are planned for 2025. Finally, the latest project to win a building contract is the Odyssey complex, an imposing complex of 3 skyscrapers located behind the Tour First, which is proposed to be built in 2026. If you would like to know a little more about these new towers, I advise you to watch my video on the new skyscrapers planned for La Défense by 2025. I put this video in the description below. With regard to the history of the districts, we see that on several occasions, the most ambitious projects for La Défense have always been cancelled. Often for financial reasons or for political reasons, because in France, for the most part, public opinion doesn't favor the construction of high-rise buildings. But skyscrapers are totally legitimized in La Défense for practical reasons, and their locality outside the walls of Paris allows the preservation of historical heritage and the Haussmannian identity of the city. Unlike many other business districts, La Défense reflects the history of the French capital. From the Louvre to the Arc de Triomphe, the historical axis allows La Défense to place itself in contemporary French history. The district reflects the economic success of the country, while offering one of the world's most unique skylines with a symmetry reminiscent of the French landscape architecture. Alright, that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If so, feel free to press the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching and see you very soon on Looking For. Goodbye.